Well, after all that, so welcome to Psychology 230. Nice to see you all here. So what I'm going to do today, how I'm going to start, is I'm going to give you an overview of the content of the course. And then I'll give you an overview of the class requirements right at the end. But I think we might as well jump right into the content to begin with. So there's a website. I don't really like Blackboard, so I have my own website. You can go to jordanbpeterson.com, and underneath there's a menu that lists all the courses, and the full syllabus is listed there. So all the information that you're going to need about the course can be found there, including most of the readings, although there is also a textbook, which I presume a majority of you have already purchased. So it also lists the other things that you need to know, like what days the tests are going to be and what the assignments are. And I'll go over that anyways at the end of the class. So, but to begin with, I'm going to tell you what the course is about, so you can decide whether you're in the right class or not. So, personality is a somewhat peculiar field of study in psychology, because it spans a number of subdisciplines that aren't particularly well suited to one another. So, for example, it spans clinical psychology and experimental psychology. And it also spans an approach that is associated fundamentally with single individuals, with an approach that analyzes individual characteristics in large groups, which is generally what you have to do in experimental psychology. It's also a relatively strange admixture of philosophy and, I would say, engineering and medicine, as well as science. And you might think of medicine as a science, but it's not. And the reason that it's not is because it's concerned with the promotion of health, and health is not a scientific category. It's a category that can't help but be value-laden, because you have to decide what constitutes health and what constitutes illness, or what constitutes wellness and what constitutes pathology. And there's no way you can do that without bringing value judgments into the equation. It's particularly true in psychology, because when you're thinking about what a healthy personality might be, you generally don't merely think in terms of the absence of pathology. You think in terms of the presence of positive traits, right? It's someone who's fully healthy mentally and physically, while the psychologists, especially the humanistic psychologists from the 60s, might consider someone who's truly psychologically healthy self-actualized, which would mean in some sense that they've been able to develop the entirety of their positive potential, whatever that is. So, because of these peculiarities, personality psychology, a course in personality psychology has to be pretty wide-ranging. And so this course is, in fact, wide-ranging. It brings in elements of cultural history, elements of moral philosophy, and then elements that I would consider almost completely biological. And it does that in order to provide you with a multi-dimensional view of what it means to be a human being. I have some other principles that I abide by while I'm teaching this course as well, and one of those is that I don't really want to tell you about anything that I don't think you will find useful. And useful, like, there's a difference between a fact and a useful fact, right? There's lots of facts. You can go on Google and you can drown yourself in facts. I'm sure you do that every day. But a useful fact, to me, is one that transforms the way that you look at the world, or the way that you act in the world, in some manner that you find beneficial. And so another way of describing useful from that perspective is relevant. And so one of the principles I abide by is that I don't really want to teach you anything that isn't relevant. And my criteria for relevant is, first, is it going to make a difference to you personally? So are the things that you learn immediately meaningful to how you interact with the world? And then the second is there some evidence that the facts that you're going to be that you're going to be presented with actually have some social utility, or some political utility, or some economic utility, so that the fact that you know them makes a difference to the way that you act in a way that also affects the people around you. And so it's for those multiple reasons that I brought together the material that I have brought together. Now, that means that there's some factors that you have to take into account before you take this course. And there's another personality course being given at exactly the same time. This semester anyways, and so it may be that that one's more suitable for you than this one. I don't know. But I can tell you what this one's going to be like. And so if that isn't what you want, or if that's not what you're interested in, then you probably shouldn't take this course. So the first issue is that there's a lot of reading. There isn't as much reading as there used to be in this course, by the way. But there's still a lot of reading, and a lot of it's original source material, both from the personality theorists themselves and then also original source material from empirical papers. So I would say that not only is there a lot of reading, but the reading's actually quite difficult. I think it's useful, given the way I already defined utility to you, and so I believe that reading what I present to you is going to be good for you, but if you don't have time to do a lot of reading, then you're going to find this course frustrating. So there's also, because of the emphasis on clinical theoreticians, which is a major part of personality theory, especially the more classical personality theory, which, by the way, is generally the elements of personality theory that most students are most interested in, there's a lot of what I would consider philosophical material. And the reason it's philosophical is because it's concerned with how a person should live. And that's a much different question than what a person is. So it's how a person should live, or perhaps how a person might transform themselves or act in order to transform themselves so that their personality is, well, for lack of a better word, better. Now, you can substitute healthier for better, but in a context like the one we're discussing, the difference is trivial, really. So then the last thing that I would caution you against is that I don't lecture from the reading material. So often I'm not exactly sure even what I'm going to tell you when I come to class. I know the material, but I don't want to stick to a prescribed outline. I want to talk to you about the things that I think are important. And so, with luck, that'll make the lectures worth attending and worth listening to. But if you're more inclined from a temperamental perspective to want a course where things are laid out in a very orderly fashion and they progress in a linear fashion and it's predictable and the lectures reflect the reading material, then this is not a good course for you. And so I would presume that would be the case if you're orderly. And by the way, that's one of the subdivisions of the Big Five personality trait model. And orderly people tend to be conscientious, but they like things cut and dried and laid out in a linear fashion. I'm not that orderly. I'm higher in openness, and openness is a creative dimension. And open people tend to use relatively loose associations when they speak and to cover a wide amount of territory. And so some people will like that. If you like reading literature, for example, you probably like this course. If you don't, then you probably won't. So anyways, that's pretty much enough for the warnings.
For anyone interested, I'll be leaving a link to the class syllabus in the description below. I look forward to watching this with you guys and seeing what happens. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. Have a nice day.